I'm desperately in love.
But I don't know how to approach him.
How did the two of you first meet?
I can't say exactly when we met for the first time.
Well, I can't really say.
We knew of one another for years.
But the time that really matters is when we were reacquainted in March of 1758.
We certainly were not anticipating it.
I was soldiering at the time, had been for several years. The war against the French was not going well, and I was incredibly sick, almost to the point of death.
I had been widowed the year prior, in July of 1757. My husband of 7 years, Daniel Park Custis, passed away after a very brief illness that left me the administratrix of the entire Custis estate with 2 small children to raise on my own.
The weight of watching hundreds killed, wounded, and driven from their homes had finally taken a toll, not only on my mind, but my body, and I collapsed under that weight.
I was responsible for everything. Every decision, every letter, everything had to come from my pen, a duty I did not take lightly.
I spent the next 6 months teetering between life and death, and had a great deal of time to think about my future and what I wanted.
I had no intention of re-entering society. I was quite content being alone with my children. It was not the life I had envisioned living, but it was what the divine providence had given me.
In March, I came to Williamsburg to ask Dr. Amson if I was going to live or die. He very kindly told me it was the former rather than the latter. While I was in Williamsburg, a friend of mine, Richard Chamberlain, told me that there was to be a small gathering at his estate, and that I had to stop by.
Mrs. Chamberlain had written to me asking me to come to her estate. They had been my neighbors in New Kent for many years, and we had a lovely time. But that afternoon, every time I tried to leave, she told me I had to wait for Richard to return from Williamsburg.
I had no intention of staying.
I had no idea Mr. Chamberlain was bringing a guest with him.
In fact, I told my man Bishop to keep the horses saddled and waiting outside, as all I expected to do was give my regards and then continue on to Winchester.
When Mr. Chamberlain arrived, he escorted into the room a tall, handsome, blushing up to his eyebrows and very embarrassed Colonel Washington.
But there was Mrs. Custis, a lady of infinite quality and far beyond my social station.
I had not seen the Colonel in years.
I had not seen her in years.
And there was a rumor going around Williamsburg that he had died, so to see him in person was quite the shock.
I had heard that someone else was passionately pursuing her at the time.
Who?
I won't say his name, but I had no hopes of our conversation being any more than pleasantries.
And it was love at first? Well, second sight?
It was not so simple as that.
As we spoke, I realized that she was the first person to listen to me and see beyond my position as a soldier and the weight of societal expectations that had fallen upon me.
He was the first person since my husband passed away that saw me for me. He wasn't interested in the size of my estate or what being attached to a Custis could bring him.
She was kind.
He was kind.
She asked questions that took me aback. She asked me how the war had affected me.
He asked about my children, their names, their ages, what they liked, what they didn't like.
She saw me for me, something that I hadn't experienced in quite a long time.
So many gentlemen were so eager to tell me what I should be doing with my children, with the estate, with my people. Colonel Washington was the first person to ask me what I wanted.
When did you know you wished to marry one another?
That first night in March, we spoke for entirely too long.
Poor Bishop was outside with the horses for hours. Eventually I remembered and dismissed him for the night, and he still has not forgiven me.
the end of the evening, I told Colonel Washington that when next he was in the area, that he might come by my estate, the White House, so that we could continue our conversation. I didn't expect to see him for months.
I was back in 2 weeks.
That started a lovely spring and early summer of meeting when we could.
Continuing that conversation that started at the Chamberlains.
We talked about everything.
I felt like I could be myself.
Eventually, we realized that we preferred to be in one another's company above all others.
It was a simple decision, really. We both were seeking a partner, and we found it.
In each other.
But I still had other responsibilities, namely the Forbes expedition.
He was away for 9 months.
I was still a soldier, and I had to finish what I started.
But we kept in touch during his absence, through pen and ink.
It was a comfort to me.
It was a comfort to me.
We took Fort Duquesne from the French in November 1758, buried our comrades that had died at Monongahela 3 years prior. I came back to Williamsburg to resign my commission and went straight to her house.
He arrived on Christmas Eve.
It was snowing.
We had been expecting him much sooner.
My carriage axle broke on the way.
My sweet Jackie tried to stay up to greet him, but fell fast asleep before he arrived. My little Patsy and I were there to greet him. And 2 weeks later,
We were married.
On 12th night.
January 6th, 1759. It was the perfect time to be married for us. 12th night, the end of the Christmastide season, is a time for new starts, renewed hope, fresh beginnings.
all of those things both the Colonel and I were searching for, and we found them together.
Good day, and welcome to today's live stream of the Washingtons Wed. I am Patrick, and joining me today are Colonel and Mrs. George Washington, who are this year, 1769, are celebrating their 10th anniversary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We are looking forward to answering your questions, so please send them into the chat. Now, Christmas is usually thought of as a time of parties and celebrations, so what was the reason that you chose 12th night as your wedding date?
Well, we had several options for when we wanted to marry, of course. But we decided 12th night because, as you've pointed out, Christmas is a time of celebration, and it is the last day of Christmas. Mm-hmm. And for both of us in that year, which is 10 years ago now,
It doesn't feel like it, but yeah, 10 years ago.
we were both very much looking towards a new start together as a family, combining our family. And we thought that Christmas was a wonderful time to celebrate not only the new year and the new beginning, but also a new start for us.
It had been a challenging, to put it lightly, a couple of years in both of our cases. You for your familial circumstances, me with the war against the French. And so a clean break from the past to the future was most definitely desired.
Certainly.
Sure. It's a great way to start a new year.
It is. It was. It will be again.
It is every year, right?
Oh, well, thank you for asking after them. I'm sure many of you are aware I have two children from my first marriage. My son, John, and my daughter, Martha, whom we call Jackie and Patsy. And they're very young, or they were 10 years ago. And
They still are sometimes.
and they, I think in a way it's been a blessing and a curse because they were so young when they lost their father. They don't truly have a full memory of their father in particular. Of course, we keep his memory alive. And so the Colonel has, in essence, been their father since they've been very young. And while Jack immediately took to you, I think your uniform most certainly assisted in that endeavor.
Yeah.
Patsy, well, she's my youngest, and she's always been a bit of a fragile thing, a very perceptive child. And once she embraced you as a father, well, I think that you have been wrapped around her little finger ever since then.
Every finger she has would be a more accurate description, really. But, yeah.
But it certainly was a process to learn how to become a new family. And I am very thankful that I've had a partner in learning that.
It's wonderful. I'm glad they're taking to you.
It's a process, you know. The truth of the matter is, their circumstances, of course, orphaned them, and so therefore it is my responsibility to do everything I possibly can to stand in the gap and assist them in whatever way. But they're delightful, and I am very fortunate that you and them have welcomed me into your family with open arms for as long as they have.
They adore him. They call him Papa, and he cannot deny them anything they want, in particular when we're in Williamsburg. Every shop he has accounts with purchasing Patsy or Jackie something else.
It's a little embarrassing, actually.
No, it's not.
No, I delight in it every time.
I can't believe you've been married for 10 years. Sort of rapport you have. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Well, we have a question from Tina. Was the wedding ceremony held at a church or in the home?
Oh, well, Tina, what a wonderful question. We were married at my home, the White House, which is one of the Custis estates out in New Kent County. And it's more common to be married in the home rather than in the church. And really, it's just for logistical reasons. It's easier to all gather at a house rather than go to a church, and then it might be several miles away then to go to a house itself to celebrate thereafter. So while we were married in St. Peter's Parish, we were married at my home of the White House.
The weather was not the best at the time either, so frankly it was a better choice. It was snowing and a bit of a uncomfortable season as it was, so it made more sense in the long run.
Oh, very good. We have another question from Anita. She says, I understand when you made it to Mount Vernon after your marriage, it was nothing like the present home and very sparsely furnished.
It was fine. It was absolutely, no, there was nothing in the house. It had been a bachelor's home for quite some time. My brother John and his wife Hannah had been staying there for a while at Mount Vernon, assisting with managing the property while I was busy in the West. And the house wasn't even mine. I was leasing it from my brother-in-law's wife, his property. And so because of that, I had not been there in residence in any capacity, really. And by the time we were reacquainted back in '58, they had moved and begun construction of their own home, or had finished construction. They were transitioning to that. And so when I came there, there was no particular reason for much to be in the house because of my circumstance, and my health wasn't good, so I didn't do much with the building, and I frankly wasn't expecting to survive through the war at that point at all. And so it wasn't really even a home.
It was in want.
It was in much need. It was in much need.
We remedied it fairly quickly.
I think you remedied it very quickly.
I do remember that when we married in January, obviously, it being our anniversary just now, and the Colonel and I spent the first several months in Williamsburg after our marriage, owing to some business and you taking up your seat in the house. But I didn't actually, and the children did not properly ever see Mount Vernon until April of that year.
Oh, goodness.
And the outside of it was very beautiful.
Recently beautified, because the building, the roof had just been finished being put on it.
And I think I remember very distinctly the day before we arrived in April, some 10 years ago now, you wrote to Mr. Alton, the estate manager.
Yes, I did.
And asked him to send one of our people on ahead and asked Mr. Alton to go fetch the key to the house from our neighbors, the Fairfaxes at Belvoir next door, to polish the banister,
Yes.
to set up a bed,
Yes.
and then to ask the Fairfaxes if we could borrow a chicken for our meal, if that indicates the level of nakedness of our pantries. But we remedied it. I brought with me about 12 wagon loads of goods from New Kent.
Oh, very good.
So we very quickly made the house into quite a home.
It took a few years to get everything settled as we wish to have it, but that's always the process. And frankly, it's never settled. I'm always
You're never
toying.
satisfied.
I'm always toying with the place, either a new color of paint in one wall or wallpaper in another. Or I was thinking about adding an addition actually on the one side.
What?
But we'll talk about it later.
A gentleman's character if he will spend the entire 2 weeks of a Christmastide season with a prospective bride's family, specifically my family,
Goodness, yes.
and still marry them.
Not that I had much of a choice. I don't think you all would have been taken kindly if I just walked out the door and
Well, you
disappeared.
did return the carriage already. You had no escape
I had no way to
route.
get away. It was snowing. It was bad.
Yeah,
It was a delight. Her family, they're all very lovely, wonderful people, and they've welcomed me with, well, I mean, your uncle over in England hasn't really welcomed me in the conversation. But anyhow, no, the family that living here, I feel as comfortable with them as I do with my own family.
Well, I'm sure that impressive level of fortitude might serve you well in the future.
I survived diseases in the war. That's really the only fortitude I had at the time, but that's very kind of you.
Disease is one thing, family is another.
Family is another.
Especially at Christmas.
Especially at Christmas time.
Brings out the best in family.
Oh, that's one way to put it. Yeah.
Well, Tracy has another question. This is, who was in the wedding party? Did you have a wedding party?
I'm not quite certain what is meant by a wedding party.
Did you have someone that, a bridesmaid or a maid of honor or someone there to bear witness and to...
To assist in the nuptials and such, other than
Correct.
the reverend? No, really, not really.
No, my sister was there as far as assisting me on the day, but and of course our children were there. But of course the most important person was standing right beside me.
Oh, you said standing. I just was confused for a moment. It's fine.
People say he has no sense of humor.
It's very sweet.
Very sweet.
We have another question from Maisie. What was your wedding reception like, if there was one at all? Was there any dancing or music? And was it like a Christmas party, being that it was around Christmas time?
Well, frankly, it all kind of combines into one. 12th night is the end of the Christmastide season. But frankly, Christmastide is not really much of a celebration in Virginia, in the Church of England. Now, people keep it. The Presbyterians don't. They don't keep it at all. But the reality of it is that 12th night you have balls and gatherings and dances at times.
Fox hunts.
Fox hunts. In my case, lots and lots of fox hunts. All the time. I like fox hunts a great deal. There's nothing quite like riding on a horse through other people's property.
Moving on.
All right, fine. And so the party, it was really nothing particularly special and unique. It was a nuptial time together. Frankly, it was more about us spending time with your family than
It did
anything
extend
else.
to the Christmas season that year.
It did a bit.
For our celebrations lasted at least several days thereafter
A few.
of the ceremony.
And then, frankly, it was right to work. We had to properly figure out the circumstances of the household. You had to teach me how to manage your children's property, how to handle political circumstances. It was not exactly a long, drawn-out period afterwards that we had time to just settle and be alongside ourselves. It really wasn't until after the government ended in, May that year, that we actually had time to begin to figure out what our life together would look like.
But it was a very happy day, of course.
It was.
Of course. Well, it seems like many people experience similar problems, especially after the wedding and having a lot of business to attend to before being able to truly enjoy the married life. And I would just like to acknowledge and hopefully give you the opportunity maybe later on or another time for you to wax poetic about fox hunting.
I would be more than... we can do it now if you'd like.
I believe we
all
need
right.
to keep moving on.
Maybe moving on to other things?
Yes.
Well, should take you sometime. You'd enjoy it a great deal. Do you ride?
I will.
Good. We'll bring you along. It's fine. No
Wonderful.
concerns there whatsoever.
Ezra, who is 12 years old, has a question, and she wants to know if you were nervous asking Mrs. Custis.
Was I nervous asking
Were
Mrs.
you?
Custis
You've never told me. You're
to marry?
blushing right
No, I'm not.
now.
I'm not. It's warm.
I see a little red.
No, it's my hair. It just reflects the light. Was I nervous? No. I'm always nervous. No, yes. Frankly, I don't exactly remember which of us asked the other first. It more was a mutual understanding. But I would be lying to say that I was completely confident and sure of myself in the conversation. You have to understand that my wife, because of her previous marriage and her social circumstances, was far higher than myself from a social standpoint in the colony of Virginia. And so because of that, she truly was condescending to have a conversation and engage with someone of my sort. Again, do not misunderstand. I was definitely born to privilege, but not born to the Custis, Randolphs, Lees, et cetera, et cetera. So there was some, I think, trepidation in feeling out of my comfort in having such conversation with a lady of quality in that regard. But the one thing about now Mrs. Washington is that she has a way of making people feel at ease. And her kindness and generosity, I think, assuaged those fears and those nerves, as the young fellow put it. So that when the time came to have such a conversation, I think I forgot very quickly about the nervousness and was more moved towards the excitement of the potential future. Did I do that well? Was that good?
Never heard him discuss his feelings before that meeting.
I very rarely have them.
You are positively beaming. May I ask you a question, Mrs. Washington?
You just did?
Well, I may ask you another one.
That's the
course
second
you
one.
can.
You just asked twice,
Yes,
actually, if
indeed.
you think on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was it difficult for you to allow yourself to open up to a new relationship after having moved on and found a new life where you were with your children, to open that door and to go down that path? It can be scary for some. So, did you experience any of that?
Mr. Rooney, I don't believe I've ever been asked that before. Yes, you must understand that while the Colonel and I have now enjoyed 10 very happy years of marriage, I enjoyed 7 extremely happy years of marriage with my first husband. We married when I was 18, and we were blessed with 4 children in our 7 years of marriage, my youngest 2 being the 2 to survive. And I don't believe that it is ever anyone's expectation to have such a short time with the person that they had to, in some cases, fight so diligently to afford the privilege of marrying. And so it was a challenging time. And certainly when I was widowed, the weight of the entire estate was then placed upon me, including my 2 children, who in the eyes of the law were orphans. And I, being a rather determined person, decided that I was going to manage it by myself. And that is exactly what I did. And I think in essence, by making that very determined decision, I was shutting my own heart away from having to deal with the grief that the loss of my husband presented. And certainly there were several gentlemen during that time who were very eager to change my marital status, but none of them for true reasons. And it took someone very special to understand, perhaps, the feelings that I was holding so tightly and guarding against. A great deal of trust. And so it was challenging, but the Colonel and I have walked through everything as partners. For both of us. And I think it is a blessing to find not only one, but 2 worthy partners to share my life with.
It's very lucky.
I just beg to not have to choose a third.
And were you, Colonel, attracted to that level of tenacity and strength that you found in Mrs.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
The ladies of my life, my mother, friends, Mrs. Washington, are all very strong individuals who know their mind, speak their mind, and are competent in every circumstance. In fact, frankly, my mother's the one who raised me and taught me the same qualities that she mirrors herself in my own behavior: virtue, responsibility to family, to country, to king, to those who are your inferiors, to those who are under your care, those who work for you, both free and enslaved. It is your obligation to behave in certain ways towards them, and that requires a strong mind and a strong will. And my mother, Mrs. Washington, all of them reflect those qualities, and I find it quite a good thing in my particular circumstance.
A good thing. Very well said. Well, we'll move on to the next question. Marin Simon is wondering, my students are wondering, what was meant by borrowing a chicken?
I fully intended to return it.
It's quite literally borrowing a chicken, dear children.
Yeah.
We had no food.
No.
And so we had to borrow a chicken,
Yep.
which was then killed and plucked and cooked and served.
Well, there you go.
At that point, we weren't thinking of returning it. It
Yeah.
was just the simple. Yeah.
I believe they're wrapped up on the word, the term borrowing.
Borrowing. Well, the other option was just dunk it in a pot of water and turn it into soup and send it back. But
It's
that would
quite a
have not.
fascinating turn of phrase. Perhaps it
is.
is in the English language, because I wonder how many of her students have ever asked to borrow a piece of paper with no intentions of returning it in its original state.
Very good point.
The same
Yeah.
with the chicken.
Yeah. And did you return the chicken?
No.
Did you return a chicken?
No.
We have to.
Sounds like you have some outstanding debts.
The Fairfaxes owe me a great deal in life. It's fine.
We have another question from Shelley Porter Schultz. 5th graders from Oklahoma want to know where you met.
The first time, I don't really recall. the one that I think matters most was in March of 1758. It was at a mutual friend of ours, the Chamberlains, out in New Kent County. Other than that, I do not recall the first time I laid eyes on you. It probably was when I was 16 or 17 years old, down here below.
Something to understand, if they've never been to Williamsburg, or perhaps they have a very small town where they come from in Oklahoma, is everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows everything about everyone, and about half of it's true.
And the other half is interesting.
The other half is interesting, and that's the society that we have been born and raised in. And so I agree with the Colonel that the time that truly matters was when we like to say we were reintroduced in March of '58 through some devious kindness of our friends. They were playing
conniving
Cupid.
people.
Well, we rely on our friends to help us in times when we're lost or we don't know we need something when they can see that we do. So,
Neither of us knew that we needed something.
yeah, you're very fortunate for the friends that you have.
We are
right.
indeed.
We'll go to the next question from David. That's a very good one. Were rings exchanged as part of the marriage ceremony?
One is.
One.
In the Church of England, one ring is exchanged from the man to the woman. But there is no expectation to then wear it for all eternity afterwards. I prefer to wear mine, of course, but it is not an expectation for a gentleman to receive a ring in that regard.
And to kind of piggyback on that, is there an engagement ring? Do you buy some sort of, or give some sort of gift that it signifies the commitment of the engagement?
Not as such. Not a ring designed for the purpose of agreeing to that contract, effectively. That sounds very clinical, doesn't it, when I say it that way? But no, in our particular, sometimes our gifts are exchanged. I would assume the fellow to the lady. Can't remember. Did I give you anything around that same time? No, not really that I remember.
Did you borrow a chicken, perhaps?
That was later.
Yes.
No, it was also strange circumstances for the two of us.
Way to a woman's heart is
borrowing a chicken.
borrowed chicken.
You borrowed chicken.
Yeah. How I found my way there before borrowing the chicken, I still do not know. But it was one of those circumstances. We found ourselves, when we came to our understanding, was just before I was leaving to go to war on the Forbes expedition in '58. And really there's 2 or 3 months beforehand where we were reacquainted, and then through that leaving point, multiple conversations, multiple meetings, off and on, when I would have a moment away from the regiment or when you would be available to have conversation. We very quickly came to that mutual understanding, and so I cannot really recall a specific moment when we both decided this is the time that we will decide to engage in a future together. It more came along the way, and we realized that that's what we wished to do. If I came back alive from the war, which fortunately I did, which helped a great deal. Otherwise, this would be a very awkward conversation for all of us.
It would indeed, yes. Yeah.
Actually, not for me. I wouldn't be here.
I might be Mrs. Carter.
You might be Mrs. Carter. This is true. That would have been awkward for other reasons.
And certainly war puts things into perspective.
It does.
As well.
It does. And we weren't children. We weren't teenagers twittering over the circumstances. We both had experienced a great deal of life, of hardship, of suffering, of the reality of the harshness at times of our world. And so we both wished someone who we could stand with and walk with. And so that conversation was much different than you might think it would have been.
Sure, not Romeo and Juliet, as it were.
No, everyone dies in that.
Right, indeed. Yeah.
So far, so good.
Well, we'll move on to our next question from Jim. How did Mrs. Washington's children address the Colonel after they became married?
Well, after they became accustomed to having Colonel Washington, they have always called him Papa.
Papa. And do you take to that as well?
I do. I accept what is offered. I never expected them to call me Papa. I'm not their father. She's their sole parent, and but I love them as if they were my own.
That's really lovely. Well, our dear friend Aaron has a question. What did you do after your wedding?
Oh, Aaron, it's so lovely to hear from you. We spent the first several months of our marriage here in Williamsburg. I have property in the city from that of my first husband. Anything with Custis on the name is mine just now through dower right. And as Custis Square was empty, we spent the first 3 months here. But it was not just for society, which of course we enjoyed celebrating with our friends. You were taking up your place in the House of Burgess in February of that year.
Yep.
And it
On my
required
birthday,
us
actually.
to stay near to Williamsburg for some time.
Sure.
It was a very lovely time.
Yeah,
Busy, but
I imagine a lot of people would love to come here, and celebrate their love. It's a good, beautiful area. Morgan Bishop has a question. Do you do anything special for your wedding anniversary? On this 10th one, perhaps?
We're speaking with you, Mr. Rooney.
You're very welcome.
and you as well, Morgan.
Yes, the gift that keeps on giving.
It is truly a gift, so. Nothing that exactly planned. You must understand, Mrs. Washington and I are people who like to be at home. We prefer each other's company. Of course, we enjoy going to parties and gatherings and spending time with people. Just getting us to go to them is the hard part sometimes. 12th night, obviously, there's always gatherings in the Carlisles and Alexandria, the Fairfaxes. We have them at our home occasionally. But then sometimes when the year comes, it's simply just a time for us the two with our people and your children at home, just enjoying normal life. Again, transition of the year, so even though there are celebrations happening for Christmastide in our case, it's also the beginning of a new farming season, and so there's a lot of work that has to be done, and so I tend to have myself, unfortunately, focused on making sure those things are put into place and accomplished, and the same thing for you. It's not exactly not everything stops in the Christmastide season for us.
But we always make sure to note the day, of course, even if it's privately rather than in a public function.
Sure.
That's the most important part.
Yes, it seems like you are not concerned with sentimentality too much, and I admire that. As pragmatism and getting work done is definitely the way.
You have to understand, sir, I have two faces that I wear. I have a public face and a private face. We all do in our society in really ways, and so publicly I tend to try to keep myself with a bit of a stiff upper lip sometimes. But truth is, I hold sentiment very close to my heart. But as a man of public responsibility, I must carry myself with a certain air at times, if that makes sense.
It does indeed, yeah. We'll move on to our next question from Barbara. What happened to Martha's estate after the marriage?
That's a very good question, Barbara. After the marriage, I think that we should perhaps discuss what happened after my first husband passed away,
Please.
because that indicates a bit more as to what happened upon our marriage. My first husband, you must understand, died rather quickly after an illness of only 4 days. He contracted it on July 4th and had passed by July 8th of 57. But because he passed so quickly, he died intestate with no will. Now, that does not spell doom and gloom for any estate because, of course, English common law will always protect everything. And so there were several provisions within the common law that were enacted immediately to include one provision called dower rights or dower law, which dictates, and again, every colony interprets it differently, but for the cases of Virginia, that every widow has a right to 1/3 to 1/2 of her deceased husband's estate, both real and personal. 1/2 if there are no surviving children, but 1/3 if there are. And so in essence, the estate was divided into exact thirds. A third for myself, a third for my son, a third for my daughter. My son, being the heir of the estate, he will one day receive all of the property. And so his third consists mainly of real estate. My daughter, her third consists mostly of bank stocks in London to be held for her. My third, under dower law, is a mixture of it all. But there are even more delineations between how the property is managed. The real property, for instance, the estates and the people on them, for slaves, are considered real property for purposes of inheritance. A widow only has what are called life rights to them. Meaning I have the use of the property, I have the profit of the property, but upon my decrease, it all goes to my son. So in essence, I am the steward of it.
Sure.
The personal property, my gowns, my jewels, any ready money, I have absolute right to. And so thus I can do whatever I wish.
And you can pass it on to whomever you would like afterward?
Exactly so. Which also means that upon my marriage, my husband then gains the right to all of my absolute property. And so upon our marriage, the colonel became the rightful owner of all of that. We had understood even before our marriage that he would become the guardian of my children.
By your selection.
In essence, Colonel Washington became the manager of the entirety of the Custis estate upon our marriage.
And will that, when you decease, will that pass on to your children as well in the same fashion?
Whose property?
The property that now belongs, that he is now the guardian of.
It's all hers.
It's
Sure, all her
it's
children's.
Yes, he does not own any of it.
Right. Okay.
And I cannot
He just
profit from it
manages
either.
it.
Yes.
I can gain no financial benefit from it whatsoever. If I do, I am highly fined, and the property will be stripped from my care and given to someone else by the courts. I have to give an accounting every year. So it all reverts back to the children upon her decrease.
But should the colonel pass away, which of course we're not going to wish for in this new year of 69, I would still retain rights to all of the Custis property.
Right.
And whatever I leave to you in my will, which is, I believe at this point, my intention is to leave all of it to you.
At least one borrowed chicken, of course.
At least one borrowed chicken.
At
Well, that
least
goes to
one
the
chicken.
Fairfaxes.
We'll move on to another question from Marin. This is from one of their students asking the colonel, do your dentures hurt?
Oh, no, they're quite fine right now. I actually don't have dentures just now. I do not have any false teeth. I do have a few molars that have been giving me trouble for the past couple of years. I used to crack walnuts with my teeth when I was a child. So I'm sure at some point in time I will have to have dentures made. But as of now, I do not have any of myself. They're typically made out of human teeth, hippo ivory, calf jawbone, mercury, lead, carved to fit in shape. I've saved a few of those teeth myself for use in them. As well, dentists oftentimes will purchase teeth from poor folk, and also enslaved people will sell their teeth typically at times for the use of dentures or live implantation, which is another conversation, which probably is not appropriate at this given the circumstances. But no, my teeth are quite fine right now. Thank you very much for asking.
Wonderful. Moving on.
Yeah.
Marty has a question. Do you ever disagree or argue? It doesn't seem so, but if I may add on, we all know we are human, and of course, if you're married and living together, you cannot avoid arguments.
We always agree on everything, don't we, my dear?
Of course we do.
Mrs. Washington is always right.
As you rightly pointed out, Mr. Rooney, we are humans, which means that we all have opinions. Certainly we argue, but I don't think that we ever have had a severe argument. Normally it is a discussion betwixt us, but always behind closed doors.
Of course.
As the colonel pointed out earlier, we do also have an expectation publicly to represent the Washington family as a united entity. And so if there are any squabbles over something like the color of paint on the walls,
Why there ever would be such a question, I have no idea.
how many foxhounds one truly needs to have to go fox hunting adequately, we discuss that behind closed doors.
And then we do what Mrs. Washington says.
Of course.
Obviously.
Well, I guess, yeah, the question isn't do you argue, it's how do you move on and how do you move forward from an argument, right? And
Well, the process always, we try to listen to the other individual and come from their perspective and understand that reality. And also recognize that at times there may be compromises that can be found, but sometimes a decision simply has to be made, and depending on the sphere that it falls upon, that is that responsibility. You know, for example, if Jack needed chastisement for something that he had done, yes, there's a certain point that I will correct that, but eventually I recognize the fact that I am not truly his father, and therefore ultimately the decision lies with his mother. And in that responsibility, then in her final word is law. Of course, with my input and my opinion always being expressed, but at the end of the day, the decision is made. It is her decision to make. That's an example that can be used in that circumstance.
yeah, it's an effective example. It's great. Well, we have another question from Tara, and she is wondering, what is something you both love about one another after all of these years? After these 10 years?
I adore my husband's sense of humor. It's something that I'm quite certain not many people realize that my husband has.
Oh.
And he has a very dry, cutting sense of humor.
No.
That after he gets to know an individual, he will truly let it be known.
Let fly, as it were.
Yes.
It's true, probably. Now, my wife, it would be difficult to pick one thing about her, frankly, because every aspect of her person is a delight. I think perhaps the best thing, she stood with me in perhaps the worst times of my life to this point. You know, the war was challenging for me, for the soldiers, for the people of the frontier, the details of which are not necessary for polite company. But when other friends proved themselves to be false friends, Mrs. Custis in those days, who had owed me nothing, offered friendship in a way that no one else had, and that has not ended these past 10 years. So I think that kindness, that directness, and that willingness to stand with someone even though they should expect nothing from you, really the core of what love is, isn't it? Offering to someone that which truly they do not necessarily deserve.
Well, that's very lovely, and I think an example that many of us should try to uphold.
I read it in a book once. That's why I said it was. So,
Well, you saved us the reading of the book, so thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
April has a question. How has the latest political climate, the Stamp Act, etc., impacted your marriage and home life?
Well, I mean, home life, politics are always with us. Thankfully, the stamp tax crisis has mostly come to a close, but we've had other challenges since then. Parliament continues to overreach their authority, and I will not go waxing eloquent on this, otherwise we'll be here for hours. I frankly am tired of talking about it. But the truth is, those political circumstances, be they good or ill, always have impact in the home. Because of the nature of who we are, because of my position, because of your children's position, because of who you are. Anything that I do publicly directly impacts and potentially has ramifications for my wife and her children. And so I would not say that it has made our home problematic, but it is a realization and a reality that we are always aware of. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think more than anything, we have to represent my husband's politics, not only publicly, but in the home as well.
Right.
And so whenever there are accommodations or even motions that must be symbolically laid, oftentimes it is the home that is affected.
Of course. If I may tag on to that, do you discuss your kind of political business with Mrs. Washington, and is there an exchange of ideas, and do you influence how he kind of goes forth in his in the Colonel's political life?
What would you say, my dear?
Of course, we discuss everything, because everything that he does in the House of Burgesses, or everything that I do in a shop down the street, it directly affects the reputation of the Washington family.
Of course.
And we must always act as a family.
Great. Unfortunately, we have nearly come to the end of our time, so we will end on this final question. What advice do you have to offer our listeners, married or unmarried, for this new year?
Well, I would say this. Finding yourself how did I put it? An amiable partner for life is something that I think is worthwhile to be pursued. It has brought comfort to me. It has brought structure to my understanding of the world. It has supported me when I've needed it most, and I hope in turn I will be able to be supportive to the lady who has so kindly allowed me to be a part of her world. She has not yet woken up and realized what she's done yet. So patience, desire to care for the other person above all else, not ignoring challenges but working through them, are all things that I think are important, regardless of whether you have a romantic attachment to someone or simply a friend or an acquaintance, regardless. That's what I would say. Should be much more eloquent, I'm sure.
No, not at all. This is the beginning of a new year, Mr. Rooney. This is the end of Christmas, and we're about to begin the year in earnest. And if I could say anything for this year of 17 and 69, whether it be with your partner, whether it be with an old friend, or whether it be an acquaintance or a complete stranger, I think the thing that we all must try and achieve is civility, is to achieve friendship, is to be bold enough to have the conversations that need to be had, but in a civil manner, which sometimes our society forgets. It is something that we try and always remember in our partnership, to be worthy partners to each other.
We're not perfect.
Of course not. But through conversation, through discourse, and through understanding, all things are possible.
I couldn't agree more. Well, that is all the time we have for today, but I want to thank the Colonel and Mrs. Washington very much for your time and your attention and being willing to answer these questions. And we'd like to thank you, all the viewers watching and sending in such great questions. And I would like to say a special thank you to our donors whose generosity helped make this program possible. Now, to learn how you can contribute, please follow the links pinned to the comments below or join us at colonialwilliamsburg.org. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and a new year.